Somewhere I Belong, Chapter 6, Truth or Dare. Isaac sat alone at a bar, sipping an auburn liquid from a small shot glass. He looked up at the old bartender and ordered another round. He let out a heavy sigh as a girl, brunette, 5'7", with vivid green eyes, took the stool next to him. "How can I help you?" "I'll take a shot of Jack if you don't mind." "Coming right up," he said as he finished Isaac's order. The woman looked at the man with a raised eyebrow. "Rough day?" "You could say that," he said as he slammed the drink back. "If you keep drinking like that, then you'll get sick." "So?" "Fine, go ahead and drink yourself into an early grave," she said as she rolled her eyes. "That's the plan," he said as he took another drink. "What's your name?" she asked as she sipped her drink. "It's Isaac." Isaac was all he got out before he noticed that the girl's physical features had drastically changed. Her once dark hair had turned gray, her deep green eyes had turned jet black, and blood was beginning to pour out of her mouth. Isaac screamed in horror as the bar around him began to collapse. He felt the creature tugging on his arm, preventing his escape. Isaac shot out of his hospital bed covered in sweat and panting heavily. He looked down to see his hands were violently shaking. "Calm down, just keep it together." His thoughts were interrupted by a series of knocks on the door. "Who is it?" "It's Nurse Redheart with Twilight and her friends." "Hang on a second," he said as he put the uncomfortable gown back on his body. He sat on the bed and took another moment to collect himself. "Okay, come in." The door opened to reveal the 6 mares with smiles on their faces. "Hey, Isaac, how—" Twilight noticed his pale face and obvious signs of sweat. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, bad dream, that's all," he said as he wiped his brow. "What's up?" "We brought you some clothes to change into," Rarity said as she laid some clothes on the bed. "Thanks." The mares then started to leave one by one. "We'll let you get changed," Twilight said as she turned towards the door. He nodded and noticed that Rainbow was giving him a weak grin as she left. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed the 2 scars on his back. Isaac threw on the garments to see that it was a deep blue t-shirt with black trim. The pants felt like blue jeans, only lighter. Isaac walked over to the nightstand and picked up his phone, Peapod, the book that Twilight had lent him, and the feather Rainbow had given him. He slipped the feather inside the book so it wouldn't get damaged. On his return trip, he walked out of the room to see the mares waiting patiently in the lobby. The mares smiled at him and got to their feet. The group walked through the doors and made their way back into town. "How are you feeling?" Twilight asked. "A lot better than I was," he said with a smile. Twilight leaned her head close to his and whispered, "Are you and Rainbow okay?" "We reached common ground." "Oh, that's a relief. What's the agreement?" "She never leaves me on a cloud again, and she owes me a favor." "A favor?" "She said I could ask her for one thing and she'd do it without hesitation." Twilight rolled her eyes at the agreement and let out a sigh. Rarity glanced at her watch and her eyes shrank. "Terribly sorry, darling, but I must get back to the shop. I must get this order done for a client," she said with a smile as she hurried back to her shop. "Crap, I'm on weather duty this morning. I'll see you later," Rainbow said as she took flight. "I gotta get back to Sugar Cube Corner. We're getting a new shipment of flour today. Yay!" Pinky took off like a bullet towards the bakery. Today is reshelving day at the library," Twilight said as she and the dragon teleported from his sight. He looked at the yellow Pegasus, who flinched and quickly flew off. "Was it something I said?" he asked as he looked at Applejack. "Fluttershy's still adjusting to the fact that you're a meat-eater, since she takes care of animals and whatnot." Isaac nodded as he looked at the mare. "Oh, I see. Need some help at the farm?" "Sure, if you're up for it, that is." "Relax, my leg is as good as new," he said as he gave it a tap. "Well, all right, just don't hurt yourself. Here, Twilight asked me to keep an eye on this for you," she said as she tossed him his knife. "Thanks," he said as he slipped it in his pocket. Isaac noticed that she was sporting her signature Stetson hat, along with short denim shorts and an orange flannel shirt. The two continued down the road in silence until they got to the apple farm. The two began to pick the red fruit. "So you have apple trees where you're from?" "Oh yeah, hundreds of them. The first tree I planted was an apple tree." The orange mare looked at him in surprise. "Really? You've planted trees?" "Yeah, there's a program on Earth that is dedicated to the preservation of plant life," he said as he tossed a few apples into the bucket. "What's Earth?" "Oh, sorry, that's the name of my planet." "What's it like there?" "Can't complain." "Is it nice?" she asked. Crystal blue water covers nearly the entire surface. Snow-capped mountains punch holes in the clouds, and rocks big enough to level a house. "Sounds beautiful," she said in a curious tone. "Yeah, but if you're not careful, it can kill you," he said as he began to walk with the mare back to the house. "Same goes for here," she said with a chuckle. "Well, besides me falling from the sky, nothing scary has happened to me." "Just wait. Every once in a while, something happens that needs fixin'," she said as she rolled her eyes. "I hope to go home before something like that happens," he said in a lighthearted tone. Applejack lowered her head and looked at him with a sad look on her face. What's the matter? You want to go home that badly, huh? Look, it's like I said yesterday. Your place is here and my place is back home. It's just that it sounds like you don't like being here, she said as she lowered her head. Isaac put a hand on her shoulder and gave her a smile. Hey, I'll miss you all when I go. I guess I was just being selfish. You probably have all sorts of human friends back home. No, not really, he said in a low tone. Really? Why? I'm not much of a socialite back home. What about a mare friend? She asked as a small blush rose on her cheeks. A what? A special sun pony. Oh, you mean a girlfriend? No, I don't have one. Why? Just curious how human society works, she said in a nervous voice. Isaac shrugged and the two continued to work on the farm. Deep in the Kentalot archives, the Royal Sisters, along with Discord, began sifting through the priceless collection of knowledge. Luna went off on her own, while Celestia kept one eye on her book and the other on the God of Chaos. Discord ignored the Sun Goddess's observations as he continued to look through the archives. As he noticed the small chest sitting on a pedestal, Celestia made a loud coughing noise. Discord looked back at the princess, who cast him an icy glare. Will you stop looking at me like that? I'm making sure you're not looking at something that what could possibly destroy Equestria. Honestly, Tia, it hurts that you don't trust me. Celestia glared at him as she slammed her book shut. Fine, be like that. I'm going for a walk, he said as he vanished in a cloud of smoke. Celestia rolled her eyes and continued to look through the seemingly endless array of books. Isaac and Applejack were on the last row of trees. As they moved on to the next tree, Applejack let out a sigh as she looked at the last tree. What's wrong? This is the tallest tree in the orchard, and guess where the apples are? At the top? At the top, she said as Isaac began to walk towards it. What do you think you're doing? Getting the apples. I thought that's what my job was. No way, no how am I letting you climb again after you got out of the hospital this morning, she said as she pressed her pointer finger into his chest. I'll get them. No offense, Jackie, but I have more experience with climbing, he said as the mare glared at him. I'll get them, just you watch, she said as she walked over to the trunk and tried to lift herself onto the first branch. Need some help? He asked with a smirk on his face. The orange mare let out a low growl and nodded. Isaac walked over to the mare and put his hands on her hips. The mare blushed as she felt the human lifting her up. Can you reach the branch? Almost, just a little more, she said as she outstretched her arms. Isaac wrapped his arms around her legs and hoisted her higher. Isaac felt the mare's tail brush against the back of his neck. All right, I got it, she said as she lifted herself onto the branch. Isaac felt himself as he looked up at the mare's flank that seemed to hug to her denim shorts. I'll be right back. Be ready for the apples when I toss them down to you. Isaac nodded and got the barrel ready. As he watched the mare climb higher and higher into the tree, his mind began to wander. I guess she is good at climbing after all. She definitely has the body for it. Don't even think about it. About what? You know what. I can't give her a compliment. You know what I mean. She's a horse thing. What will happen when you go home? What? I think of AJ as a friend, nothing more. And Win is looking more like an if. I could be trapped here for the rest of my life. That doesn't scare you? Why should it? The ponies here are kind, and it's a nice change of pace from the assholes back home. They're not human. Someone has their racist settings on high today. ... Look, all I'm saying is that if we're going to be stuck here, we might as well make the best of it. The thought of even dating. Ugh, AJ is just a friend, and... You okay down there? Isaac snapped out of the trance to see that Applejack was near the top of the tree. Yeah, just staring off into space. You were staring at me. You were just in the way, he said as he tried to lie. Whatever. Ready for the apples? Isaac nodded and held up the bucket. The mare started to toss down the apples one by one into the bucket. Isaac felt like she was making him run around on purpose as she threw a few out of his reach. She chuckled as a few hit his head, causing him to stumble. Isaac shook his head as she covered her laughter. All right, I'm coming down, she said as she started to descend. Isaac put the barrel down and watched as the orange mare slowly made her way through the branches. Be careful and watch your footing, he said as the mare looked down at him. I know, I ain't. She was cut off as she lost her grip and began to fall towards the ground. Isaac quickly positioned himself in her way and cushioned her fall. Isaac felt the mare collide with his chest and his back hit the ground. As he opened his eyes to see that the mare's face was less than 2 centimeters away, Applejack's face was bright red as she felt the human's nose touch her own. As she moved her leg, she felt her inner thigh was pressing against his stiffening member. The two stared into each other's eyes for what felt like an eternity. Could you take your hand off me? Isaac snapped back to reality and noticed that his hand was connecting with her ample breast. He quickly withdrew his hand and got to his feet. Sorry, the way you landed was... No need to apologize, it was an accident, she said as she tried to hide her blush. Isaac helped her to her feet as he averted his eyes away from the mare. We should probably get these apples back to the barn. Good idea, he said as he picked up the crate. The two made their way back to the barn in silence. Applejack pulled the brim of her hat down over her face. Isaac kept looking forward, refusing to make any sort of eye contact with the mare. As they made it into the barn, an awkward silence fell between the two. Let's just pretend that never happened, she said, breaking the silence. What never happened? Exactly, she said as she handed him a few bits. I can handle the rest by myself. You can go.